it's kind of interesting because it wasn't a key theme of the book until later on. I carried a story around in my mind for years about 3 generations of a family that I wanted to write about, 3 women in the same family. And I tried to write a play about that back in the 1990s when I was doing playwriting. I tried to set that story in New York and just never had a place for it. So that was one of the things that I'd been kind of carrying around for a while. Another issue that I wanted to explore was motherhood. And so that's a key theme in the book also. And I wanted to explore it not from the joys of motherhood. A lot of people write about the joys of motherhood, but I wanted to think about it from the aspect of those women who don't really embrace motherhood but find themselves as mothers. So that was another key aspect. Another thing that happened was my mother lost her father at a very young age, 13 years old. And I always felt like that changed the trajectory of my mother's life in a really significant way. That she was always a sad woman, and she made choices that she may not have made had that not happened. So I wanted to explore that issue. So there were all of these characters that I had thought about, all of these situations I had thought about, but I didn't really have, they weren't coalescing into one book. They weren't coalescing into one story. And then one day I picked up the newspaper and I saw the announcement of the pipeline. And I'm always looking for those kinds of issues that are filled with tension and filled with controversy and filled with kind of the old West colliding with the new West. And I thought, and that sparked, I grew up in Utah's West Desert, and so that sparked a lot of interest for me, and I thought, that's it. That's my situation. That's the perfect place to put all of these characters I've been carrying around for so long, and all of these issues, and all of these family relationships. That's the perfect situation to put them in. Part of the dynamic, too, was the relationship between Nell and Henry. And they were so in love, and it was such a close, passionate, wonderful relationship. And I've always kind of been curious about what happens when a child enters that kind of a marriage, where the 2 people are so close. What does that do in a marriage? Either it brings them closer, or it creates jealousies, or it creates some sort of issue. I wanted to explore that also. And I made the decision many, many years ago not to have children. And people always expect that later in your life you'll regret that decision if you make that decision. And now when I see, young mothers with several children or grandmothers with several children, I usually think, oh, thank God that's not me. So it's always been the right decision for me. I wanted to explore what happens, because for women, and especially women who grew up the way I grew up in the Mormon church, 6th generation Mormon, and that wasn't a question you stopped and asked yourself. You didn't stop and say, do I want children or don't I want children? You just went ahead and did it. But it was a question I stopped and asked myself. So I often wondered, what happens to those women who enter that? That's not a job you can just quit. That's not a job you can say, I'm not really suited for this. I think I need to do something different. Once you're there, you're there. And that was very much Nell's situation. So I really did want to explore the other side of motherhood that you don't read very much about, which is the really challenging side, and the side of motherhood where you really think, is this really right for me? I'm interested in hearing anything they want to discuss. I try, as a writer of fiction, I think it's my job to raise questions, not to answer questions. So I've done quite a few small book clubs with this book, and I'm always shocked by what comes up. I'm pleasantly surprised by what comes up. And so when someone says to me, I loved the way you did this, this, and this, and I think, really? Wow, I didn't really know I did that, but great. So I just love to know what resonates with readers, rather than me trying to say you need to walk away with this message or you need to walk away with that message. I hope people think about all the issues in this book: family relationships, lies, secrets, the choices we make that we later have to deal with the consequences, the water issue, the way we relate to the land individually, the way we relate to the land collectively, all of those kinds of things. I hope they all think about it and ask themselves how they feel about those things. But my job isn't to tell them how to think about it, just ask them to think about it.